Hello, welcome to Shepherd My Heart. Today I want to talk about what it means to be a neighbor. And this was in response to a question that a lawyer asked Jesus when he said, "What must I do to inherit eternal life?" We're going to look at this in Luke chapter 10, verses 25 through 37, and I'll be reading from the ESV version. It says, "Behold, a lawyer stood up and put him to the test, saying, 'Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life?' He said to him, 'What is written in the law? How do you read it?' And he answered, 'You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself.' And he said to him, 'You have answered correctly. Do this, and you will live.' But he, desiring to justify himself, said to Jesus, 'And who is my neighbor?' Jesus replied, 'A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell among robbers who stripped him and beat him and departed, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, passed by on the other side. So likewise a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. He went to him and bound up his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he sat him on his own animal and brought him to an inn and took care of him. And the next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper, saying, 'Take care of him, and whatever more you spend, I will repay you when I come back.' Which of these 3 do you think proved to be a neighbor to the man who fell among robbers?" He said, "The one who showed him mercy." And Jesus said to him, "You go and do likewise." Jesus didn't respond to this man with a theological dissertation, but he called the man to relationship. He said, instead of giving him a direct answer, he told him a story. And maybe Jesus saw this happen, but he put the question back to him after he told the story. And it was the lawyer who responded and said, "The one to whom he showed mercy." The way that the Samaritan dealt with this man that was beaten and robbed is how Jesus responds to us, with mercy. He comes and he sees us. I want us to look at some of the things that the Samaritan did, and we can see that this is how Jesus responds to us. It says he saw him. He had compassion. He went to him. He bound up his wounds and poured oil and wine. He set him on his own animal and took him to an inn. He left money to take care of him and said he would be back to pay anything else that was owed. Jesus is giving an example of how he serves us, that he responds to us with mercy. The word says that even while we were enemies of the cross, Christ died for us. The Samaritans were enemies of the Jews. And it was probable that the reason that this man was traveling from Jerusalem to Jericho was to avoid going through Samaria. So here is this man who was avoiding Samaria, and yet it was a Samaritan that helped him. There were several reasons that a man would travel from Jerusalem to Jericho. He could be traveling there for trade, for a religious festival, on military official business, or for the wealthy, they would go there to relax and escape. The priest and the Levite passed him by, but the Samaritan stopped. Jesus is showing a contrast here. The people who should have cared for the man did not. The one who we would not expect did. And this is in response to the question that the lawyer asked, what must I do for eternal life? So this was an important question. And Jesus responds. And he asked the lawyer, who do you think the neighbor is? Again, we say, he responded by saying, the one who showed mercy. Jesus is constantly bringing us to relationship. We see this when he says, love the Lord your God. Love your neighbor as yourself. This is eternal life, that you may know Jesus Christ. Abide in me and me in you. It's more than a list of rules. And it makes us uncomfortable. Life is messy. It's inconvenient. But it is not just about existing. But Jesus calls us to really live. There's something that happens when we go beyond ourselves and who we think we are to reach out to somebody else in need, even if that person could be perceived as our enemy. God invites us to look beyond the surface, what we see on the outside, and to look at the value that he has placed upon the soul. What if we would look at Paul? Paul was persecuting the church. He was killing Christians. And yet Jesus intervened and called Paul and said, you are fighting against me. And Paul turned around and became an amazing evangelist. What does God want us to do with this question? What is Jesus calling us to when he asks us, who is your neighbor? I invite you to ask yourself that question. Who is the neighbor that Jesus is calling you to see, to show compassion, to provide, and to bring to Jesus? Everything we do must point others to Jesus. First, we receive the love of Jesus. We have to truly know and understand what it means to be loved by him. And then we have the joy and the privilege of extending that to those that Jesus brings into our lives. I pray that you would know what it is to be loved by Jesus, and then to know what it is to extend that to others. God bless you on your life as you follow Christ.